Triggers, trusts, and tax cuts. On May 17, 2016, Arizona voters are being asked to vote on a constitutional change to how we fund our public schools. You may have heard a lot about the necessity to vote yes on Proposition 123. The biggest talking point is it adds money to our schools without raising taxes. It's not that simple. And this is why, once learning all the facts, there are so many people from all over Arizona raising their voices against Proposition 123. Give me a couple minutes of your time, and I'll tell you why you need to vote no on Proposition 123, why we must demand funding for our schools the right way, and how we can get the money without all the problems and financial traps embedded in Proposition 123. So what is Prop 123? In 2000, voters ordered the state lawmakers to increase funding for our schools every year to keep up with inflation. Lawmakers followed the law until 2009. Then, unilaterally, they decided they did not need to follow the law. In desperation, our schools sued to get the funding that they depend on. Our state's highest court, the state Supreme Court, unanimously agreed in the favor of the schools. The courts asked the parties to go to arbitration. Arbitration failed. Governor Ducey then inserted himself in the process and pressured the parties to create Proposition 123, announcing that the schools would only get 72% of what the courts had said was due. So what are the problems with Prop 123? The first problem with Prop 123 is all the hidden triggers. There are so many triggers that pull money from education built into Prop 123. If we ever have a recession, a rise in unemployment, or less tax revenue collected by the state, Prop 123 declares that during these events, K-12 education doesn't get the inflation money that they so desperately need and money that the voters demanded be paid. The most critical trigger stays in our Constitution forever. It prevents us from ever spending more than 49% of our state budget on education, even though every expert agrees it will prevent Arizona from getting out of the bottom 5 of the worst funded states for education. So if Prop 123 has its way, Arizona will remain close to dead last in the country in education funding forever. That's not the Arizona the parents or educators want, nor the Arizona that we deserve. I know what you were thinking. The triggers are pretty bad, but doesn't Prop 123 add more desperately needed money to our schools? Well, not quite. The majority of money going to our schools from Prop 123 comes out of the State Land Trust. What's the State Land Trust? The State Land Trust is a trust fund of the proceeds of land granted by the federal government to Arizona upon statehood. It is then invested in stocks and bonds, and the earnings from the trust go to fund education. Prop 123 wants to pull $2 billion of the principal out of the State Land Trust over the next 10 years. This will permanently shrink the purchasing power of the fund, so the fund pays out $100 million less for education forever. You heard right. If Prop 123 passes, that means our schools will receive $100 million less in 2026, 2027, even the year 3000. If we agree that pulling that much money out of our land trust is a bad idea, then why do our politicians want to do that? We have a $600 million budget surplus today. We could afford to give our schools the money they desperately need now without any of the triggers and traps of Proposition 123. Why don't they? Tax cuts. Our politicians have said over and over that they plan to use the state budget surplus to cut corporate taxes. They would rather deplete and plunder the land trust, the only reliable source for our schools, and cut corporate taxes instead of just paying the schools the money that they are owed. Not a good idea. It's also important to realize who's funding Prop 123. So far, 2 Arizona billionaires have donated $1 million each to pass Prop 123, and another $2 million has been donated from contributions of $10,000 or larger. If this isn't about tax cuts, then why are they donating? So all of this for a funding package that would provide just $300 per year per student, this is anything but a good idea for our kids' education and for the future of Arizona. Most education advocates acknowledge that Prop 123 is an awful deal, but they say it's the only way the lawmakers will allow any more money for our schools. We've already hurt a generation of kids because of the reckless decisions by these lawmakers. Now Prop 123 will negatively impact every future generation by taking money from our land trust to pay for these billionaires' tax cuts. So what do? We can fund our schools the right way, and we should. The state has a $600 million budget surplus in the bank. A portion of that money should be sent to schools today. The courts have found our governor and legislatures failed to pay our public schools the money that they are owed. Our state judges have already shown that they are ready to defend the will of the people and to do what's right for schools. We, parents, business leaders, teachers, students, everyone in our community should be ready to do the same. Standing up to our politicians will take courage, and we need it more than ever when it comes to our kids and our future. Take a stand by voting no against Proposition 123, and let's fund our schools the right way.